Okay, so first of all, thank you for showing up today because I've heard of famous people having book signings and book launches where one or two people showed up, and I wasn't sure how many would show, and so I'm grateful to all of you for coming. This may be a little bit different than other book launches you've been at because in addition to sharing some of the poems from the book, I'm going to be talking about the driving force behind the book. And I'm going to roll back to 2012 when my oldest son started a publishing company, a journal in print called Spark, an anthology. And he was obviously, as a beginner, looking for things to include. And I asked if he would allow me to submit since we're related. And he said, of course, but it has to be good. So thank you. So I did. I actually submitted one of the poems that I thought was really, really good, and it was published. And then I published two or three poems over the next couple of years. But in 2016, as I got more familiar with the poetry community online and the possibilities, I realized I had lots and lots of poems and that I could actually publish a book married with the photography that I'd been doing. So in 2016, my son edited and had published my book, A Clear Day, in October, which I dearly love because the quality of the book is just fabulous. It's glossy, it has full color photos inside and out. And I just loved it. It's still probably my favorite book just in terms of look and feel. But that got me sort of stuck or started on a road of publishing. So I collected more poems, and then in 2020, 21, 22, and 23, I published four more books, one with Kelsey and then three with Cyberwit. And after the last one with Cyberwit, I wasn't real happy with the way the publishing, the whole piece had gone. And I decided maybe I didn't care if I ever published another book. And then this year, I hit some vulnerability doors and decided that maybe I had more to share than just trying to be flowery with people. And I realized I had quite a few poems that I had written about the impact that mental illness has had on me personally, on my family. And as I looked around at other people, I realized how many people I know who have been directly or 1 degree separated from mental illness. It just seems to be everywhere. And I thought, if I can share my journey and my thoughts in a way that other people can relate to, if nothing else, to realize none of us are alone on this journey. We just don't talk about it much. And so I'm talking about it. And that's kind of what brought me to doing the book. And I really wasn't thrilled about the idea of going through traditional publishing because I hadn't had a good last experience and I didn't want to wait a year or more for the book to go through the full process of manuscript being accepted and contracted and down the road. So I put the book together. I did the cover myself. This is one of my original photos, and Myrna Hayes, who is here, recognizes that as part of the Mare Island Reserve. So I decided to go ahead and do a self-publish with Amazon. That was an experience in itself, but it wasn't as painful as I thought it might be. So that brought me to the book, which is now in print, available on Amazon. And I ordered a number of author copies, and bless you all. And a lot of you who aren't here, I'm down to 2 author copies left, so I have to order more. And I was going to do that last night until Amazon said it will arrive between this and this date. I'm going to be out on vacation celebrating my 73rd birthday during those dates, so I have to delay it a little bit. At any rate, I will have more author copies at any time anyone wants a signed or inscribed copy. And I'm going to put in the chat some information for you that will give you links to the book itself on Amazon, to my author page, and information for ordering the book if you would like to. So that's where we are, and I'm going to share my screen because I know some of the people who wanted to participate in this have difficulty with just audio. So I'm going to give you all a chance to read along. Can you see the poem Secrets? Good. One of my problems with Zoom is that I don't get to see the screen the way you're seeing it, and that's okay. I will tell you, as a child, I was clinically depressed, didn't have any idea because, number one, psychiatry wasn't at a point where anyone would have diagnosed me properly. Number two, there were no medications for treating childhood depression. And number three, I don't think my family would have accepted that diagnosis or done anything about it. So I lived my life the way I lived it, and I didn't realize until I was an adult how much impact depression had had on me. So I kept my life secret, my feelings secret most of the time, and that's where this poem came from. Where do you turn when you're young and the guilt of sins, real or imagined, daily grinds and nightly devours you? Older years would know to seek a father confessor or a friend's ear, might choose to drown the voices with the contents of one bottle or another. I remember those days, gray and hopeless, when heaven was too far and no one knew and no one cared that the small boy with the worried face was dying from his secrets, not knowing how to live, not daring to stop. That hell is gone, but the memories stay. At odd moments, a child's face or a parent oblivious pulls them up and plays them fresh and crisp like Memorex. I hold my own child tightly, stare at his furrowed forehead, afraid to promise that he will find the peace I never could when I was young. So there's that background. And then, of course, poetry. Why do people write poetry anyway? Well, I'm great at sarcasm and satire and irony, so I never needed poetry. Not once was I ever incomplete, mute, stumped, at a loss for words when the moment arose and demanded an immediate response, the quick kill of another's ego. I had at my disposal an arsenal of nouns, verbs, adjectives, and the like, arrows in my quiver that never emptied, bullets in a high-capacity magazine strapped to an automatic reply. But those were the public moments, harsh offenses masquerading as defenses, verbal DMZ around my desperate ego, longing to be heard, understood. Privately, I turned to poetry, not of necessity, but because it felt like a downlined nest, where every fledgling painful thought could sit silently, undisturbed. The warmth of rhyme and rhythm, like the feathered belly of a mother bird, who would defend me more fiercely than my two-edged insults ever could. Those were the days of my growing, painful passage from boy to man. Language was my weapon, poetry my safe room, until I knew enough to surrender the cache of destructive biting barbs, leap from my arid refuge, and fly on the wings of unfettered verse. So I will say poetry has definitely been an important influence in my life and learning to deal with how I felt about myself and relating to other people. And then I started 4 years ago a project called April with Friends. I took a National Poetry Month and offered to write a poem a day for anyone who would like to give me a prompt. Most of them turn out positive or at least philosophical. This one was requested as emptiness and no qualifiers to it. And it took a rather dark turn because it reminded me so much of how I had felt as a youngster. What do you use to fill a zero? Take away the emptiness. Color it in with black pen, it's still zero, only darker. What do you do with an empty glass when the well is dry? The sun is brutal, ground parched, cracked, not a drop of water anywhere, not even a tear. What do you do with a heart drained of love, nothing left to feel, not joy, not sorrow, only the darkness of an empty, bottomless well? And anyone who has suffered from depression will recognize that the anhedonia that accompanies severe depression can be crushing, just like there is no joy to be had in life. So that made it into the book. As a nurse working ICU, I saw people in a lot of distress, both physical and mental. This particular poem was written after treating a young woman who had come into ICU after an attempted suicide by drug overdose. And of course, it was during the holidays when depression takes its toll on a lot of people. So this was her holiday retreat. The peace on your face this New Year's Eve says nothing of the storm that led you to this excess, uncounted pills, phone call announcing your decision, running from demons only you could see, running from those who came until you ran out of room. Tonight, I will watch over you, counting pulse and respiration, poised to intervene if they fade or fail, wishing you a better year, knowing I will not see you again, and you will never know of my quiet concern as I stood watch over your holiday retreat. And then there are the things that we learn that are sort of innate. This one is tongue in cheek, but with some truth behind it. Lion's breath. Before I formed memories, I knew I did not want to be eaten alive. Knew it in my innocence, and it stayed with me, quiet, but always there. A fear that a beast with knives for teeth and hot, hungry breath would find me unprotected, devour me without thought, leave behind no trace. What then was I to think when mother's lips brushed my unsuspecting ear to whisper, "Shush, baby, shh." Her breath, hotter than my fear, was cold. I was about to be consumed. So forgive me now. When you lean in close to speak your love, and the fine hairs on my neck stand and scream, "Run, run!" She is full of the lion's breath, and you will not see morning. And I think that speaks to a lot of the fears that we have that we can't particularly identify. My children, two of them have had such significant mental illnesses that it has impacted their ability to function well. The first avalanche, if you will, was finding out that around age 10 or so, my third child was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome, and the rages, unprovoked and unanticipated, were incredibly difficult on the entire family. And it felt at times like we were just being bombarded with avalanches. The buildup was was unmonitored in the frequency of storms, an occasional thought of caution lost in adversarial winds that whipped across each day, hard, cold, biting. Today, under an almost sunny sky, a single word dropped like an acorn in the days and weeks of snow, an infinity of small events holding desperately together, lost their communal grip, roared down rocky terrain, buried everything and everyone around in cold fury, leaving at mountain's top unexpected emptiness, barrenness, depression. And we went through that over and over and over, the Tourette's rage, keeping the child safe until they calmed down. And eventually that was followed by depression, which was hard to work with. And as I said earlier, I find more and more that we were not alone. We just didn't know other people were having the same issues. As a result, I detached as much as I could, feeling kind of like a detached garage. And so that's what this poem is. Separate, alone, and apart, my own detached garage provides safety net, hiding place. Teenager screams hate, frustration, and helplessness like a storm into the night air. I hear the words across the cold space between us, but they lose their sting, slap like autumn leaves, wind-whipped rain against indifferent walls, against a heart too tired to respond. I watch through foggy windows for a break in the fury, thinking I will dash into the storm's calm eye, diffuse it, let it sputter into small showers that taper and blow over. And I wait, wondering what seeded these clouds, thinking how content I was in the warmth of a clear sky that blessed me for a week. Cold and angry winds beat against me, daring a response. Door slamming winds thwarting each attempt to jump the gap back home. Howling crazy winds, shrieks and whispers, so much energy and no direction. Tomorrow, I keep praying for tomorrow to hurry and unfold around me, sunny and quiet again. Tonight, I am resigned to no peace at all. And of course, as an adult, recognizing that I had been depressed as a child didn't make it any better when my own children showed up with clinical depression. The difference being that there was diagnosis and medication, but we've had lots of conversations. Weighed and always wanting. She is her own tribunal, self-accuser, sole magistrate. How hard it is to pardon self, though with a mental stroke of pen she might be free from the grinding guilt, indentured to ideals which, unachieved, add sentences, add judgments against a life already too short, too long, too heavy. Like Haman, she has planned high gallows, thinking she could destroy the source of her sorrow. But morning turns and she is found wanting in the cold stare of her conscience, self-condemned, self-confessed, quietly curtailed and coffined in her mind. And we shared a lot of her frustrations. She was so clear and so adamant. I never want to take my own life, but I don't want to live like this. And then there are those who don't survive. And for any reason, whether it is suicide or accident or old age or illness, people die and leave us alone. And then we look for signs. And I wrote this not that long ago, thinking about the things that we choose to see as signs from those who've gone ahead of us to the next life. Everything is a sign. The rose petal that falls at the exact moment you pass, the cardinal that sits a second on the windowsill, then flies, the cloud that can be imagined into the shape of her face, the stranger's dog that stares, then barks like you know who, the swirl of leaves that spirals just as you think of his laugh, the car that won't start until you speak her name aloud, the parting of storm clouds that illuminates his grave, only his, the snapping of a twig behind you when no one else is on the trail, the colors, the sounds, the scents, everywhere you go, all whisper whatever you need them to whisper to fill the million empty moments. Everything is a sign because whatever is gone requires it, because your aching heart demands to know you are remembered. And I'm going to end with something a little more hopeful. Even though the title of the book sounds like despair, it is the opposite. All these things are broken. The prison of procrastination, the iron shackles of sloth, the wilderness of willfulness, the loneliness of pride, the ark of arrogance, the trap of intolerance, the jail of greed, the barrel of boastfulness, the heavy yoke of ignorance, the dark hours of despair. All these things are broken, and I am newly born. So let me get things back to a gallery view because I want to see all of you. And I am really, really sorry, Betsy, that I did not see you early enough to let you in sooner. I do hope you'll be able to go back and look at the video, which I will post later. So at this point, I will ask that if you would like to, you go ahead and unmute. I will take any questions you have, any discussion, and we'll see how things go from there.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us, Jim. I think it's really brave, and I'm so glad poetry helped you.
Me too. That was definitely my safe room.
And Jim, I feel the same way that you do when you say that the main point of telling these things, telling these stories is to let people know that they're not alone. And when I listen to your words, my first response is, yeah, he's nailed it. This is so accurate, so true to these processes. It's and it's wonderful to know that you're not alone.
It is. It's part of the opening the door to healing, to recognize that it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to acknowledge.
And when I was young, it was the same thing as Jim was saying. I mean, there was no psychiatric diagnosis or anything. If we suffered from anything, all we were told was just get on with it, you know, kind of like suck it up and just keep going. And nobody said, you know, what was happening. I mean, our parents would console us and everything, but if we went deeper than that, it was like, oh, there's something wrong with this person, you know. And I'm not just talking of myself, but even my friends. So now there's so much available. That was the first point. But my second point was just that writing these things is such a challenge. So kind of really hats off to you, Jim, for putting in words, because we all know that poetry helps to express our deepest joys and sorrows. So it's just great. I didn't want to write anything in the chat because it would take me away from actually listening to those words. So I'm looking forward to the book and to read the words again and again. And it's such a challenge writing about these things. So thank you.
And thank you. You and I share some interesting connections through poetry. And I see several others here. Mary and I share nursing as a background.
Yeah.
Myrna, your parents who were involved with healthcare.
And
Jim,
Rosie is also a poet.
I think everyone here is a poet,
Yeah.
which is wonderful, because talking to other poets about things that are really personal through poetry makes it safer for me. I can say things directly to someone by reading a poem that I could never just say to them directly without the poetry. So I'm happy that we have that in common.
the great Donald Hall said, poetry is the unsayable said.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's the whole point of poetry, in my opinion, is to say what we can't say with regular speech.
So
And
we
say
have
what
all,
other people, you're never going to sell 1 million poetry books, but there'll be somebody out there that will need to know exactly what it is you've had to say.
and I think that at least was part of writing this book and publishing it. Not because I thought it was going to somehow supplement my income, but because I felt it was important to have it
I'm
Yeah.
still
in
waiting.
the world for people to find.
Well, I've ordered my copy and I can't wait to get it.
Cool. Let me
And
think
I
about it.
find
Go
I
ahead.
find too, Jim, that to put something in words, that's an act. And to put these kind of things, these kinds of sufferings and these kinds of perceptions into words is part of a healing process.
Yeah.
Even before anybody else hears them, you hear them as you speak them, and it becomes part of your own healing. To do that,
Yeah,
it's
it's a healing process, and I think poetry is widely recognized as therapeutic.
Yes.
Writing it
Yeah. Yeah.
in the same sense that writing a diary or keeping a journal can be therapeutic. So I like that about this process. I found an interesting thing about Amazon and ordering books. If any of you go to Amazon and order this book, it will be at your door in 2 to 3 days.
Yeah.
I go into Amazon and order author copies. I don't get them for 2 weeks.
Wow.
That's an oddity, and there may be a reason behind it that Amazon only knows. I just thought it was really strange.
The same thing when I made my anthologies. If I wanted to order some, I had to order more than I really wanted, so I'd have them in case because it took so long. I think they must make more money on the direct orders because
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. That's probably right.
I'm
Yeah.
guessing that's the bottom of it.
yeah,
They certainly might. And at this point, it's of little consequence to me, other than if someone wants a signed copy. I thought I had ordered enough author copies to start with. I only have 2 of them left, so I do have to order more.
That's great. That's great.
that's a good
You've
problem.
got a good fan club here. We've all bought
Right.
your book already.
I think I ordered one. I don't remember, but if you need one for someone else and you want to wait, I'm so backlogged. Just wait on mine. I know you'll send it.
That's a lovely offer, but I emailed your copy this morning.
Okay.
I physically mailed your copy this morning.
Okay.
I got them yesterday. I already had envelopes packaged and labeled, and the books went in and they went out this morning.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay, well, I
you
look forward to
should be
that.
seeing them Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week.
Oh, and Rosie, I got your book. I meant to write you. I've just been overwhelmed. So I'll add it.
Great. Oh, great.
I'll be getting yours tomorrow at the book fair because Shannon
Oh.
will be, and I will be at the same table.
Oh, how
Thank you.
nice.
Okay. So at this point, I'm going to stop recording, but we can continue to visit for a bit if you want.